The Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump and His Wonderful Dog Bulger. Chapter 8, Part 6. I finished my tea and sat waiting patiently for the nose tickler to arouse him. When I saw that Keen Chop was wide awake again, I arose with great dignity and placed myself beside Bulger, who was watching my every movement and listening to my words with an almost painfully anxious expression, which meant only too plainly, "What does it all mean, dear little master?" I began as follows: "My Lord Judge, most ancient, antique, and venerable patriarch, stricken in full 50 of honorable years, thy snow-white locks bespeak thy wisdom. The fact of the matter is, Keen Chop was quite a young man, and so far as I could see had no hair at all on his face or head, save a scanty pigtail. But I knew how flattering it was to a magistrate to be called old and venerable, and hence my desire to make a good impression at the very outset. My mother's breast knows no other child than me, and I know no other brother than this faithful creature whom heaven, for its own good reasons, hath set upon 4 feet, but who, if the strength of love could lift him up, would walk beside me, our two hearts on the same level. O venerable judge, whose wisdom, like fair fruit red ripened in the autumn season, is now so ennobled by the flight of time, thou knowest what love can do. Thou knowest full well how it can so steel the thin beak of the mother bird that the merciless talons of the hawk have no terror for her. Thou knowest better than this poor bit of humanity, which now pleads before thee, that man's spear hath no point sharp enough to drive the bear from her cub. Thou knowest how the timorous sparrow, to shield her nestlings, will face the viper's horrid crest, forked tongue, and stony eye. And what shall I say of this faithful creature's race? When lived there one of his kind that was known to desert a poor and humble master for a richer one, or to refuse forgiveness for a rash and undeserved blow? Where else can human hearts invest their love and draw such usurers' rates as here? We were babes together. The same sunbeams that danced a welcome on my awakening into life found him, too, just arrived. Of quicker growth, he was his brother's keeper. I gave him all my love, for no other playmate was there to share it. I planted better than I knew, for on the thankful soil of his true heart, that love of mine struck such deep and vigorous roots that it gave of its strength and power to his brain. Love hath so sharpened thought that it hath grown wondrous strong. The spirit thou callest evil is, as the learned know, a reasoning being, and although it may go upon 4 feet and whine and yelp and growl and bark, this is but the mask it wears. O aged judge, in the vast storehouse of whose mind experience hath piled wisdom many stories high, thou wilt ere long believe me, for I shall make it most plain to thee that this faithful, loving animal is not gifted with the mysterious power of reason. True, most true, nature hath widened his vision, but not removed its boundaries. Mark now, O learned patriarch, how easy a thing it is for truth to pierce the armor falsehood wears. For gird she ne'er so tightly, there are always some joints that will not come together. If my poor weak mind be not strong enough to brush away the so-called proofs of this evil spirit, then let me be withered by the flame of thy just indignation. This creature loves me. Not the vigor of 10,000 human hearts blent in one could yield a warmer love than his for me. And yet behold how short its vision is. This curious firearm was given to me by a Turkish merchant whose life I saved in a brawl. I have so set it that a feather's weight will discharge it. But first, I smeared some sugar paste upon its trigger. Lo, I turn it toward my breast. If this creature now hath but the faintest glimmer of impending harm to his beloved master, he will refuse to lick away the sugar paste. A death-like silence fell upon the assembly. I held the firearm out towards Bulger. In an instant, he scented the sweet odor of the paste and thrust his tongue out in several unsuccessful efforts to reach it. A sharp explosion rang through the great hall. I stooped and picked up the ball, which had flattened itself upon a steel plate hidden beneath my robe. Bulger's amazement was not so great as Keen Chop's. He made signs for refreshment. Tea was hurriedly served. 100 fans wafted the sulphurous vapor away from his nostrils. Once more, O wiser judge than ever in western lands, shed the radiance of human wisdom on things dark and obscure. Behold how I tear away the weft of falsehood which some ingenious mind would have this august tribunal adjudge to be pure truth. Here, on this salver, I hold some toasted bits of coxcomb. To this creature's taste, the daintiest morsel which nature and art can unite in producing. Catching a sniff of his favorite dish, my good Bulger began to bark and whine and strain his manacles to their utmost in wild endeavors to reach it. I held the salver out so as to permit him to reach a few pieces of the toothsome food. He was now beside himself, one moment begging, coaxing, pleading, the next scolding, threatening, expostulating. No doubt he was very hungry, for it was hardly to be expected that the prison messes would suit his dainty palate. Most venerable judge, I resumed, as thou well knowest, evil spirits hold in great repugnance and dread all subtle and mysterious brews and poisonous compounds with which man strives to display or destroy them. Look now, I sprinkled this coveted dish before his very eyes with a powder so deadly and direful in its effect on life that this weak hand of mine holds power enough to change this mighty hall, filled with light and life, into one vast charnel house. And again I bring the food within his reach, covering it with a sheet of glass, lest his ardor outwit my vigilance. Bulger now fell upon the plate of glass which covered the food with renewed impetuosity, giving vent to sharp cries of disappointment as he vainly endeavored to lick up the tidbits, rattling his chains as he strove to scratch away the glass which kept him from his expected feast. Commanding him to be silent, I uncovered the dish and set it within reach of several dogs which I had caused to be tied near at hand. At the first touch of the poisoned food, they fell to the ground as if stricken by a thunderbolt. Again, most sapient and venerable judge, let me add proof to proof that naught of reason dwells within the mind of this faithful creature. I was wounded once in his sight by a treacherous slave. His dagger point pierced my breast, but I smote him dead ere he could find my heart. Yet the danger of that moment seared the image of that poniard forever in this creature's memory. Bid now a retainer turn a dagger toward my breast. It was done. With frantic cries and wild starting eyes, Bulger strove to leap upon my supposed assailant. Cover now the blade with its sheath. It was done. Again my good Bulger made desperate efforts to reach the man, filling the room with cries of rage and fear. Cast away both sheath and blade. 'Twas done, but still my loved Bulger made maddest efforts to protect his master. Cast away the heft and blade and raise the empty sheath against my breast. 'Twas done. Still, it was all the same. No matter whether covered or uncovered point, whether harmless heft or still more harmless sheath was turned toward my breast, Bulger's cries of mingled rage and fear, his mad attempts to break away from the shackles which bound foot to foot, were first and last exactly as fierce. Keen Chop now did several things. He drank some tea. He ordered one of his menials to tickle his ear. He removed his huge spectacles and handed them to an attendant, who proceeded to polish them. He then attempted to fall asleep, but at a sign from me, Bulger began to bark so furiously that he gave a sudden start, as if he thought the animal was about to lay hold of his calves. Taking advantage of this, I strode up in front of Keen Chop, and fixing my gaze upon him, spake as follows: "Most ancient magistrate, I crave your gracious consent to add another plea to my defense of this dumb creature. I would be the veriest ingrate whom any wretched outcast might, with justice, spurn and revile, were I not to defend this devoted being with all my mind's cunning and heart's love." With these words, I sprang lightly up the steps which led to Keen Chop's chair, and ere he could say nay, caught up his fan, which he had just laid down on the table beside him. "Now, venerable judge, for a last, and I trust overwhelming, proof that no evil spirit dwells within the creature's body, here are 2 fans, thine and mine. Thine made sacred by the touch of thy age-palsied and time-stricken hand. Mine, a worthless trifle. If it were possible, made still more worthless by the touch of my worthless hand. If, as this court hath charged, an evil spirit dwells in this animal's body, it knows full well that power of life or death hangs over thy lips, that thou canst pardon with a smile or slay with a frown, that thou canst condemn to lingering torture, or strike his shackles off with a nod. Aye, more, that if it should to thine eyes seem meet and wise, thou canst adjudge both master and dog worthy of death, and grant them no greater boon than that their blood shall flow together after life is over, as their love was one when living. Behold, I cast these 2 fans at his feet." Loud murmurs broke out all over the vast assembly. Many rose in their seats and craned their necks to watch the result. Bulger looked up at me with a puzzled air at first, but his mind was soon made up. He picked up my fan tenderly and carefully, and with wide open, love-lit eyes, raised himself on his hind feet and laid it in my lap, wagging his tail the while, as much as to say, "Never fear, little master, I know what belongs to thee." Then, with an outburst of snarling, barking, and growling, threw himself upon Keen Chop's fan, shook it savagely until the rich painted covering was torn in shreds and lay scattered about, tossed it up in the air, only to leap upon it with all 4s as it touched the floor, and then setting his stout claws in its joints, wrenched them asunder as if they were made of paper. But this was not all. To complete the list of indignities which he had visited upon Keen Chop's property, he now turned his back toward that grave magistrate, and by several sudden and vigorous kicks with his hind feet, sent the sticks in a shower flying so close to his head that one actually struck against the huge disc of glass placed in front of Keen Chop's right eye. But a court officer, who had fallen sound asleep and let his head fall backward, did not escape so luckily. 2 of the largest sticks entered his nostrils and remained sticking there like arrows in a target. The man awoke with an ear-piercing shriek. In spite of the commands of the court officers that everyone who laughed should be bastinadoed, there was a suppressed giggling here and there. Keen Chop himself twisted his face into the most comical grimaces in order to keep from bursting out into a fit of laughter. As for Bulger, he was beside himself with pleasure. In fact, he fairly howled with joy. Keen Chop now moved his thumb as a sign that he was about to speak, and a deep silence fell upon the multitude. I was summoned to approach the steps of the judge's chair. He spake as follows. And we'll pause here and we'll continue with this story in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thanks so much for watching. I love you guys, as Tigger says. Ta-ta for now.